welcoming Nick Sharma to the show. Pretty excited to have you here.
Dude, I can't believe it's taken this long. It's all your fault.
For the record, it is not my fault. You are a busy, busy guy, but I'm happy you're here. Whenever I want a perspective on anything D2C related, Nick is my boy. I look forward to his Sunday emails where he sheds a lot of knowledge, and I just wanted to spend an hour talking about D2C.
Let's do it.
So let's just start with what's exciting you in D2C land nowadays. Like, you could be doing anything, yet you have been doing D2C for like a decade now. Why are you still in it, and what's exciting?
I was just joking with somebody before this that once I'm done with this chapter, I'm going straight boring B2B software. Like I want to make air traffic control 1% more efficient, or the back of an ambulance, some machine 1% more efficient, some contract that locks in for 50 years and takes a year to close.
Why is it just because D2C is so difficult that you're kind of like, should I do something more
It's
simple?
not that it's difficult. I think it's in fact, I think D2C is actually very sort of straightforward, but the thing is you have to be really good at being agile with how you respond to things that happen in the D2C world. For example, tracking changes, the ability of how tracking gets fed back to a platform changes, or there's a new law or a new algorithm in search and that completely changes, or there's a new algorithm from a social network that you were super reliant on for distribution. And in all of these changes, there is a very clear, okay, this is the change, which means this is what's going to happen, which means this is what we need to do to react and respond. But a lot of people don't go to the third piece, or they see it, but they don't accept it. This happens a lot too with like brands that launch that, they have the hardest time going from 0 to 1. And it's not necessarily because they're doing anything super wrong, but it's like the idea just sucks. Like nobody wants adaptogen infused hummus, for example. I'm just making this up. But like somebody is going to keep fighting for a year or 2 years, spending their whole life, trying to make this thing within that 2 years, trying to make it a reality. But it's like it's not even wanted by the market. So, in that case, I think D2C is very simple. It's like, well, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. You're either going to fit into something that will sell and do well. And of course, there's ways to test that, or you're not. But trying to fight an uphill battle and then blame it on something else, I think, is like the lazy way out.
How do you know if you're walking up an uphill mountain or if you're just like almost at the top? Seth Godin, I think, calls it the dip. Not knowing when
like
to
you've
quit.
run your clock up.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, there's so many stories of entrepreneurs who've created products who, it's like they have a week left to cash, and then like at the end they like figure it out. Like, Nikita Beer, for example, TBH, that app that he eventually sold to Facebook, like was like, I mean, I remember him calling me and being like, "Hey, dude, like, do you know how to shut down an office and shut down a company?" And I was like, "Well, whatever happened to that app that you were going to launch, TBH?" And he was like, "I don't know. Yeah, we might just launch it and see what happens." Like, he was about to quit, but he still pressed submit.
Yeah,
To the
I
App
think
Store.
that's different. I think that's a little different in the sense that he's basically, he's actually doing the opposite of what I was talking about. What I'm talking about is like, his version of adaptogen infused hummus was like the product that didn't work. And one option would have been like just keep trying to figure out how to make it work. Keep spending every last dollar on ads to drive people there or convincing people to turn it on. But, I think what he did is what most people should do, which is the pivot of, okay, this doesn't work. Let's take the learnings of what did work in this process. And it might have nothing to do with the idea of what was launched, but it might be that, oh, we found a great packaging vendor here that got us good pricing. We found a great flavor house that developed good flavors for us, and then figure out what the next at is.
There's two ways to come up with an idea for a D2C product. One is like you walk into the grocery store and you're like, wow, I wish this product would exist. Oh, it doesn't. I'm going to go and create it. And then there's another way, which is I'm going to like look at trends and competitive analysis and a bunch of other ways to figure out if there's a market need. Which way do you recommend going? And yeah, just share some light on that.
I think it depends where your strength is. So a lot of founders who start these businesses, um, like very little, a small percentage of people actually raise money. I'd imagine a lot of people who listen to this probably bootstrap or maybe have raised a very small round, but very few people raise 10, 20, $30 million to build a business. And as a result, like if you're starting a direct to consumer brand or a CPG brand or a retail brand, you sort of have to understand what you're good at. Are you good at branding? Are you good at storytelling? Are you good at sourcing? Are you good at financial operations and cash flow management? Or are you good at like performance marketing? Are you really good at, the creative side, the business side, the analytics side? And I think depending on what you're good at, you will find one of these paths to discover what that product is. Somebody who has mass distribution can take the first route of walking into the grocery store and saying, damn, I wish I had a chocolate bar with 6 ingredients in it. And then, you're competing with the biggest companies in the world. You're basically neck and neck against Hershey's and Mondelez and all these other companies. That would not work for the average person who's bootstrapped and starting, but it does work for somebody who has a ton of distribution already built in. On the flip side, something like Jolie, which is a filtered shower head, the value prop is not really in the distribution, but it's in the innovation of the product itself. And so somebody who is more focused around branding or marketing or even like, sourcing can win at that game better than maybe somebody who just has a bunch of followers and is coming to bring something. So I think it kind of depends. I mean, generally, I would say like both could do either one they want. I think one thing I've learned too is working with brands at a very early stage, you have to have some sort of a moat, something that will get you from 0 to 10 very clearly. Whether that is a very good understanding of the market, you see a clear open space, whether that's the ability to go launch into retail off the bat, whether that is the fact that, Black Wolf Nation is a men's skincare brand. They own their own fulfillment center from the get-go. They saved tons of money there, and they were able to, do tons of things around merchandising and upselling products because they could. And so I think a lot of people arrive to it in different conclusions or in different ways. Sometimes it's frustrations that somebody has on their own. Sometimes it's, something that they're just passionate about. And then sometimes there's a lot of businesses, a lot of the earlier e-commerce businesses were started by like finance guys who just said, oh, there's a clear market hole right here. I'm going to go build a product. It's going to cost this much. We're going to sell it for 3 times that. There's a clear market opportunity. There's demand for it. And, we're going to run Facebook ads.
Are the first examples of all these big D2C companies like the Caspers of the world, like, are they not failures? Like they all they're failures in the sense they became billion-dollar companies. They raised a ton of money. And now when you look at them on public comps, either they're become private in the case of Casper. I think Casper was privatized, or a lot of these D2C companies have like market caps in like the 50 to $200 million range where they've raised like $500 million or more.
Yeah. I mean, Wall Street hates e-commerce, retail, or not retail, but e-commerce, and basically like brands generally. They hate a lot of the new brands. Like Allbirds is down 95% in the public markets. Honest Company, I think, trades at less than half of their revenue. I don't think that Wall Street's judgment of a lot of these companies is an accurate representation of how these businesses could be run. A lot of the businesses were also run, operationally, they weren't that efficient. And to their credit, like they were the first ones doing it. Casper was the first company to put a mattress in a box and figure out how to sell it online and build that behavior. If Casper didn't exist, like whoever the next company was that did it, they would have had the hardest time and, ended up in the same position.
I remember sitting in New York City at a restaurant with co-founder of Casper in maybe 2011 or 2012, and he had told me that he had just graduated basically like mattress science. And I was like, that's a thing. First of all, I was like, that's actually a thing. Like, I didn't know. Like, I'm from Canada. I don't know. Like, we don't have that up there, you know?
Yeah.
That was the first. And then he was like, my idea is like, I'm going to, and I create a prototype. I created a mattress in a box. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, this guy's crazy. A mattress in a box? It's impossible. That's not how this works. And so you're right. Like, we got to give them credit in the sense of like, they took big leaps.
Yeah, big leaps. And, Casper is a great example of, Casper walked so everybody else could run. Like Casper figured out everything that didn't work so the following companies could. I think most mattress companies now that exist on the market, they don't actually have inventory that they own. They're all drop shipping on demand. And so right away, it's like, that was something that Casper didn't figure out early enough that they did. Casper had the beautiful big office in New York City in Soho. Turns out you don't need fucking a big office with 75 people to sell, e-commerce products. So I think even though like a lot of people would say that they're failures, and I do think to some extent there were mess ups, like, there's definitely founders who took tons of secondary or, took a ton of money off the table. And then, when layoffs come around, they're sitting high and pretty with millions of dollars in their account and their employees have to go figure out how they're going to pay rent the next month. I think that's pretty messed up. But I do think a lot of these early companies don't get enough credit for like paving the way for the behavior of e-commerce that they created and instilled in consumers that exist today.
So if you were running Casper or the Honest Company, like pick a company, what would Nick Sharma do?
So if I was running the Honest Company, I think right away I would figure out what products to cut. Like I think some of these brands that exist, they sell way too many things and they don't focus on something. So they're not known for one thing. Honest Company is like known for what? Good, honest ingredients, but do they really need to have a beauty line and wipes and cleaning products and bath and body and baby products? Like probably not. In fact, I would imagine that, two of these categories do really well for them and the other six just completely, they just exist. So I would probably do that. I think from a tech standpoint, there's a ton of these early brands, Honest included, which operate on a technology infrastructure that was great 10 years ago, but is not modernized and up to speed with what consumers are looking for today. I think just between those two things, you could probably shave a ton off the bottom line. And then, of course, like, going into their customer acquisition and their customer retention and understanding their lifetime value of customers, there's probably so many little things you could tweak that would turn the business and go up and to the right. Like, whoever runs the Honest Company site, like they should be fired and unemployable, in my opinion.
Okay, so if you were bringing, it doesn't look like Honest Company is on Shopify. Like if you were bringing them on Shopify, let's say, what sort of D2C Nick Sharma approve stack would you propose?
I mean, I'd bring them to Shopify Plus almost immediately. I would probably swap their subscription system to a company called Stay, which is really like a retention tool that also does subscription. They use things like Hotjar, which is, expensive and old. It looks like they've got Klaviyo, which looks good.
Explain what that is to like what's Klaviyo,
Yeah,
for people who don't know.
so Klaviyo is a ESP, email service provider. Think of like Mailchimp. Um, Mailchimp's probably the easiest comp for it, but it's like an email platform for e-commerce businesses. Um, I think like right away, just moving them to Shopify would actually probably bump up their bottom line a good amount, just because of the inefficiencies that come with using Salesforce Commerce Cloud, which is what they currently use. I would probably install a ton of apps from subscription to analytics to proper upsells to a proper review system, a referral program. Things making things easy like build your own bundle. Right now they have it, but it's very clunky and the UX is really bad. Um, and then I would start like tweaking and optimizing. I'd figure out what does it take to get a new customer in the door, a new subscriber in the door, and I'd build landing pages around that. I'd try to figure out, I have this acronym called the trace system, which is like, how do you align technology, reporting, audiences, creative, and the site experience that somebody goes to try to build customer funnels that you can rely on X number of customers coming in every day, new customers for the brand at a sustainable pace. So yeah, I think, once you make like the big tweaks, like moving them to Shopify, making the UX a lot simpler, for example, like their diapers cost $13 and it doesn't even tell you how many diapers come in the pack. Once you make all these like obvious things that they should be doing or whoever is in charge should be fired for, then I would focus on the 1% improvements across the board. So how do you increase the email capture rate by 1%? How do you increase the cart click-through rate by 1%? How do you increase the UPT and the AOV? UPT is units per transaction or items in your basket, and AOV is average order value. How do you increase that by 1% every day? And then it just becomes a game of like chipping at it until it gets to a point where it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, let's continue on this thread of Nick Sharma's honest reviews of D2C companies. What's
This is gonna get me in trouble.
okay? Well, we'll take the other side of the spectrum. What's a D2C company that's doing a really good job, and why are they doing a good job?
All right, here's one that I think is doing a really good job. Simple, straight to the point. I'm gonna drop it in the chat for you. It's a brand called Cadence. They're basically these beautiful little travel capsules made of recycled plastic. These guys, they haven't raised an absorbent amount of money, very little cash. They're profitable on every purchase. They have a healthy margin baked into their product. They produce their own product, which also helps with that. They fulfill their own product, which also helps with that. And they're very good at showing you the light at the end of the tunnel from a marketing standpoint and how you're going to get to the light at the end of the tunnel. And then, tactically, if you go to their site, their photography is next level beautiful. Their use of product renders, also very beautiful. The way that they incorporate existing customers into their sales process to sell new customers, fantastic. Their site experience in terms of understanding what you're getting, how many you're getting, why you're paying what you're paying, what the benefit of having these are, and what the alternative is for not using this product, also very on point. This is, I think, going to be a very clear $100 million brand very soon.
The photography is, I'm just noticing this. The photography is drop dead gorgeous. It's like absolutely stunning. The other thing I'm noticing is there's actually probably about 20 to 30% of video on screen. That's being auto played, but it's really helping me understand like what this product is and why I should want it. Like sometimes I'll go on some e-commerce sites and I'll see video and it feels like someone it feels like they listened to a podcast and someone was like, put video on your e-commerce page, and they did. Versus this is like really integrated into the experience.
Yeah, you'll also notice too, like with all this video, there's no lag in or no yeah there's no lag in load time or slowdown in site speed as a result.
They also have this cool feature called text for $25. I assume that they're getting people's obviously phone number capture there, which is pretty smart. I haven't seen that, like creating an SMS relationship. Are you seeing more of that nowadays?
Yeah, definitely more on SMS. Yeah, I mean SMS is like it's generally a very hard thing to get. The conversion rate of grabbing somebody's phone number is probably half, if not lower, for most brands than what it is to grab email. And also, then, the follow up to that is how good is a brand at actually using that channel and sending things that are, not coming off as spammy. But yeah, SMS is definitely something that, I think it's like every brand wants to have somebody's phone number, because your open rate's nearly 100%, maybe 99%. And your click through rate's way higher. Your revenue per send in general, your revenue per recipient that you send to for SMS is usually significantly higher than if you were to comp the same revenue per recipient on email. But a lot of people don't know how to use that channel in a way where it's like not annoying, or it doesn't, like a lot of people don't know how to bring value through SMS as their brand. And so that, then it separates the ones that are good.
I can't think of any brand that brings value through SMS to me. Like to me, it's always annoying. Give me an example of how you can integrate SMS in a way that is respectful to the channel, i.e., it's a very intimate channel. It's reserved for friends and family. Yeah, what's an example of something that you've seen, or if your cadence, like what would you do to integrate SMS well?
I think one thing that I think about with email and SMS and really anything tied back to retention marketing is your goal is not, there's like, if you think of your goal as or your outcome as like a 2 or 3 step approach, or like a bus ride. Let's do a bus ride. It's got 3 stops on the bus. You get on the bus. The first stop is actually just excitement and good content. It's something that gets somebody thinking that as they're running out of their cases of hint water, they get something fun, exciting, cute, quirky, funny, interesting, insightful from the brand. And it's not selling them on anything. It's just good content. And they see, oh, this was from Hint. Oh shit. Actually, I think I'm running low on Hint. I should reorder. And it's just about getting mind share to be, like to be the top 5 or a top 10 thought in somebody's head at any given point. That's like stop 1 on the retention bus. Then I think stop 2 is understanding, okay, does this person actually need to re-up, or do they need to know at this point, do they need to see our brand again from a sales standpoint? This is where a lot of companies that sell consumables don't properly segment their list. And so let's say you sell deodorant and somebody's on a deodorant subscription. Well, if they're on a deodorant subscription, they actually don't need to see that you're running a sale, because you don't want them to unsubscribe and now buy from the sale. And now you've lost somebody who would have stayed another 8 months or, 3 quarters. And then the third stop, I think, is actually sending that message. And when you send that message, it has to be sent in a way where it feels like it was written just for you.
Quick interruption from me. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you're getting any value, you need to come to YouTube and subscribe to the Where It Happens podcast YouTube channel. I promise you the experience is richer, more interesting. So if you're getting any value, just stop what you're doing, open up the YouTube app, go to the website, and press subscribe at Where It Happens on YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Go press subscribe. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the show.
So a lot of people, they fill out the SMS piece as they're doing the email piece. They're generally grouped together in a media plan or in a promotional plan. And that's where I think it goes wrong. It's written from this promotional POV. Like, if somebody's writing a 15% off email, they write the 15% off text. Whereas if I were writing a text, I would say, okay, who is a friend that I have that embodies the customer that we're going after? So we have this girl in our office named Carly. She is like the customer for every client we work with. And so, if I were writing a text, I would say, okay, now how would I text Carly that we're running a sale for 15% off? And that's exactly what I would then, I'd remove her name Carly and replace it with bracket first name, and put that in and let it blast off. But the real, like, I think sauce comes in. One, there's a lot of retention marketers that don't rely on good content, or it's like it's too focused on sales. It's not focused on, like, it's like, hey, let's go to my bedroom instead of, let's go to dinner first and grab a couple drinks. And then the second one is the miss of segmentation. Like almost every SMS or email tool you use today has the ability to segment customers based on products they bought, when they bought, what type of even like shade of a color they bought. But it's obviously just easier to ignore that and send the text out to everybody.
I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to create like a Carly AI bot where
100%.
right?
How do we do that?
How do we do that? No, I think I'm curious if you've thought much about how to use AI to personalize communication, but it feels like that's kind of where things are going. Like if you're able to upload data about someone's habits, how they talk, where they live, demographic data, and then basically speak to them in a way that they really want to be spoken to, I'd pay for that service.
So for something like that, actually, you're the perfect person to ask. I've had this question on my mind for so long. So let's say I wanted to build Carly Bot, and it was like, I train, in theory, I train this bot on who the customer is, what we're selling, why they're buying, the common objections or pain points they have before making a purchase. Like, where do I even start to do that?
Well, I think so. The key question is, do you actually have that data? So first, the assumption, let's just assume that you have that data,
Okay.
right? So, which isn't necessarily going to be true, right? So I think that's actually where I think some of the bigger retailers and e-commerce players like the Amazons of the world have so much more data that they actually have an unfair advantage if they want to go down this route, because you could get into a situation where your Carly bot operates at 50%, but Amazon's Carly bot operates at 100% or 97%. And that's actually, we can talk about that later, but that's where it gets kind of scary, that as we enter this AI age, there's an unfair advantage for the large players, not the small
For sure.
startups. Whereas in where it's been previous, like as we've grown up, it's always been in the startups that have been more agile. But yeah, so you have this data, and you'd have to. Well, I just actually just tweeted about this today. There's something. Have you heard of Auto GPT?
No.
So Auto GPT is new, so you don't feel like you're behind or anything like that.
I already feel like I'm behind.
And one of the big problems right now with ChatGPT is, number one, it's not connected to the internet. Number two, it doesn't have much memory in terms of it doesn't remember a lot. And number three, it can't operate in real time. The problem, if you were just to build Carly bot on a ChatGPT type playground, the problem is what if you responded to it, right? Like, and the memory wasn't very deep, or what if it's very hard for ChatGPT to make real time decisions based on how things are changing. So what Auto GPT does is, let's just say the example is a customer service representative. Yeah. And Auto GPT can understand customer inquiries, provide support, suggest upsells, and it could also literally speak in any language possible 24/7. So you can actually have it, like, you can be texting with it, Carly bot, and it responds in a voice note.
Wow.
So you, like, that's that's why, not enough people are talking about Auto GPT, in my opinion.
But like, is that so? Like, tactically, how would I set that up? Do I just go and start talking
Yeah.
to it? Like, hey, I'm going to feed you information.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like, you go onto GitHub. Like, there's a reason why the number one GitHub repo right now and project right now is Auto GPT over the last week. It's because people are downloading it and playing with it. And they're trying to figure out, okay, I want to make a customer service bot. I want to make a social media management bot. I want to make whatever bot, but I want it to act in real time. I want it connected to the internet, and I want it to have strong memory management, and I also wanted to have text to voice.
That's insane. I got to play around with
So
that.
so you could like,
Do I
my
need to
point
know
is,
how to code?
yeah, you know, yes. Like, I think, even downloading a GitHub repo without really understanding how to code is difficult.
Right.
That being said, like, I think that people actually underestimate how cheap it is to actually prototype some of these use cases. And someone like you actually have a lot of data because, through Sharma Brands, like your agency, and through, Hooks, your landing page product, you understand a lot of different segments.
Right.
So there's a way for you to basically, like, if I were you, I'd like contact a lot of my clients and be like, hey, I want to create this thing. I want to create this Carly bot. I'm going to give it to you for free. The catch is I want some of your data. You can go and create a prototype for probably relatively cheap and see if it works. Yeah, I think the cool thing about AI and your space, like in ecom, is it's gonna do two things. It's gonna drastically reduce the costs for just owning and operating it. For example, yesterday we were talking to, we have an AI and automation agency called Do Probably Need a Robot.com, and we were talking to this company that spends $300,000 a month on customer service reps. And what we modeled out is that using AI, you can actually get that to $25,000 a month.
Interesting.
You still have like a management layer, but so number one, it's a cost savings, and number two, um, arguably customer service as an example, like the user experience for most people is pretty bad. So arguably, if Carlybot's good enough, it's a better experience because there's no waiting times. Like, there's literally no waiting times. Imagine customer service with no waiting times.
Yeah, man, all this stuff is so fascinating. I feel like the biggest gap I have is what I mentioned here, which is like the process of, okay, I have this idea to do like an on-site chat bot or a customer service bot or a Carly bot for, writing up SMS messages and then making the actual like application that goes live. That gap in between is the part I don't understand and don't even know where to start
I
outside of
mean,
downloading some GitHub repo.
if I came to you and I was like, hey, I really want to create a D2C product and I wanted to hire Sharma Brands to do it, like, you would be like, oh, you got to do these 100 things. Like, you've rattled off 45 products in this 30-minute podcast so far.
Right.
Like, that it's second nature to you, right?
Right.
But like that, there's a similar stack that exists in AI that you can leverage. People act like AI is like fresh in 2023. Like, people have been building an AI for a decade. It's only like recently that there's been like huge consumer UX new products like ChatGPT that have come out. So my point here is that it might seem daunting, but once you actually get into the weeds, it's actually a lot less daunting than you think.
The customer service application is really interesting. There's a company that exists called Certainly. Have you heard of this?
Yeah. Tell people what Certainly is.
Certainly is like a chatbot you can train. So, one example here is like when Feastables launched, we had, I think, 16 customer service agents fully trained up and ready to go. And we came across this company, Certainly, that we wanted to layer into the customer service stack. It would live on the site as a chatbot, and we could basically train it. It's called FeastyBot on the website. You could train it to basically understand the brand, speak like the brand, the tone of voice, teach it how to answer questions. And this bot eliminated 96% of customer inbound inquiries. And the customer service stack went from like 14 to 2 at the time. I think now it's maybe double that. But it was crazy how much money it just saved in human capital, human resources, and also just time.
Yeah, and I'm just on their website now. Like I love their tagline, which is create a digital twin of your best salesperson,
Yeah, that's a great tagline.
right? Because that's like really what they're trying to do.
So when you see a company like this, do you think, oh, these guys are screwed as soon as Chat GPT gets to, somebody else's hands? Or are they like, they have something here about certainly in Chat GPT? Or is that just because, you know, people like me have now played with AI through Chat GPT, and like that's the best way to cast the wide net of bringing me into their funnel?
If I'm like the CEO of Certainly, am I getting 8 hours of sleep? Absolutely not. Am I getting 3 hours of sleep? No, absolutely not. Am I getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep? Yes. So I'm basically like, I'm definitely weary that I could lose to a Chat GPT plugin, or shop, maybe even Shopify competes directly. But if I'm Certainly, the number one thing I'm focusing on is how do I make the UX for the end user like the most high quality experience possible, that I'm light years ahead of whatever anyone's going to create on a competing platform, because Feastables will continue to use Certainly if the end consumer is having a good experience. What Feastables doesn't want to do is like get like a cheaper solution that even might have better AI models and has been even trained better, but the actual core experience that people are using to have these personalized conversations is worse. Then my take is that they'll retain with Certainly.
Interesting. And I guess if Certainly can continue to take their like data exhaust and turn it back into more proprietary info
Yes.
for them to make the conversations better, more efficient, faster, etc., then that is kind of how they'll stay ahead of the curve.
Totally. And it's a bit of a land grab for them. Like if I'm them, I'm trying to raise as much money as possible
Right.
so I can hire my real salespeople to call up Procter and Gamble and some of these larger companies,
Yeah.
and get them to sign up with me, even if it's for 12 months or 6 months or 18 months, and get that data in. I think Certainly is a real business. Like I would have loved to invest in this company. All right, let's do a Nick Sharma honest review. Talk to me about a creator-led D2C example that you think is high quality.
I'm going to go with Rare Beauty, which is Selena Gomez's beauty company. I like this company for a few reasons. One, I think Selena Gomez is just badass. Um, Second is the way that she decided to build this company was like how DJ Khaled puts albums together. She basically just found the opportunity and then brought all the pieces together. She brought the CEO together, the CMO, etc. The other thing is she innovated around the packaging and the way that they merchandise products. So they have these like minis that they sell in Sephora and online, which gets them, well, I should say the minis plus the fact that she is Selena Gomez and has this mass audience and distribution that she does not pay for. That allows her to sell products that aren't, super expensive and where she can still make money, which allows her to make these minis, which allows her to drive way more sampling than, maybe any other beauty brand in the category. So this is a brand that I think, they mainly sell online for Sephora as well, which does pretty well for them from what I could tell. They're very much a come sit with us type of brand versus a you have to try to get into our, treehouse or whatever. And I think they're very smart about how they go about building the brand. This is a brand that could be successful um, even after an acquisition, and Selena is no longer involved. Whereas, you think of some other celebrity brands that exist in the beauty category, their name is in the product itself, and it makes it very hard to separate post acquisition or, long term.
Rarebeauty.com versus honest.com. The first thing I notice is how different the nav bar is. When I was on honest.com, it was like 1,000 call to actions on the nav bar. Like there's just like a lot going on. When I go to Rare Beauty, there's literally 3 tabs. So you can shop. There's a shade finder, which I'd love you to talk about. Actually, I'd like you to talk about shade finder and rare impact, both those tabs, because I find them both quite interesting.
Yeah. So, the simpler the nav bar is, the better it is. Generally, in e-commerce, you want to make things easier from a UX perspective versus make them harder. When you land and you see this site above the fold, meaning you don't have to scroll, it's just whatever you see in your window. You want this to feel like you just walked into a store in Soho or on Fifth Ave. And then as you go through and see things, for example, you saw the shop, the shade finder, and the rare impact, you want to almost like limit the options to guide them through the store. So if you go into a store on Fifth Ave, somebody looks at you and says, all right, I know exactly where to take this person in the store. That's sort of what a nav bar here does. Whereas, like in the Honest example, there's probably like 100 to 150 options of what you could click as soon as you hit the homepage and look above the fold. There's things that are changing, scrolling side to side. It's kind of hard to know where to look. Whereas here, it's very clear. You land, you've got a hero product right in the middle. And then if that's not what you want, your best sellers is there above the fold. So you can always just go right there. Or you just hover over shop and you can immediately choose if you want to shop all the products, if you want to see just what's new, because maybe you came to the site knowing that there's something new out. If you're new to the brand, you might go to best sellers. And if you're a bit, if you're not new to the brand, but you know what you want, you don't want to go to shop all, you just choose between face or eye or lip. And so I think this is merchandised super well for the type of traffic they get. You have to remember too, with celebrity or creator brands, they get a shitload of traffic that they didn't pay for, traffic that they didn't send. And so, because of that, you have to really focus on how you merchandise and bring somebody through the store. Um, Now, they probably tested into both of the shade finder and the rare impact being on top, given who her audience is and what they're interested in. They probably realized that the rare impact fund, which is actually a real fund that they have, that they contribute to, is something that matters to them and something that matters to their audience quite a bit. And generally, when you have some sort of like what sets apart Selena Gomez's brand from the next product on the Sephora shelf selling blush or bronzer, well, it's the fact that like I now know that when I buy the lip oil or the bronzer stick, that I'm also contributing to something good. And that's what separates products from brands, is what keeps you coming back, and especially in the beauty category where loyalty to a brand is so low. I think it's only something like 14% of consumers will stay with a brand. They'll still try other things, but the brand part comes in when you have things like an impact fund, or it could be as lucrative as an impact fund. It could be as simple as like surprise and delight and really good text messages from the Carly bot. The shade finder too is something else that does really well in beauty. It just helps feel, it's like the concept of personalization is alive here, and it's working. It's not truly personalized because there's not that many levels of how deep this goes, but it's a very simple way to add that touch and feel of personalization where somebody feels like they're now being heard or being recognized for, in this case, their color of their skin, and making sure that there's products that match that. Also, it just probably helps from a customer service standpoint of making sure that there's less returns because somebody's color that they bought is more, connected to the actual color of their skin.
Would you ever start a D2C company, or do you prefer supporting the industry?
For sure start a D2C company. Like I think from a standpoint of opportunity, there's no better time to start a D2C company. Think about how easy it is now to use OpenAI's Chat GPT and just build a module for something. Like if we need something and a developer's unavailable, we can just go to OpenAI and it'll write the code for us and we just copy paste it. So from that standpoint, it's the barrier to entry has gotten lower. From the standpoint of product sourcing and product development, I think the barrier to entry has gotten lower. The thing that has gotten really hard is cutting through the noise and finding something that actually has legs in today's market. And I think for that, you have to be super in tune with who's doing what and who's finding traction, or who is just about to find traction, or who's seeing hints of traction. You also have to just solve something real. Like there was a huge era of D2C brands that happened during probably like right before COVID and then definitely during COVID, or brands that didn't deserve to exist. The 48th men's skincare brand, the 37th white labeled supplement for bloating. These things, these are not solving real problems. They're just trying to be like money grabs. Those don't really last because consumers today are pretty smart and they will see that from a mile away. Whereas a brand that is actually solving a real problem for the consumer, but also hopefully for something bigger, those tend to stick around and have really no problem growing. Or sometimes it's like cookware. Look at cookware brands over the last 4 or 5 years. They've all just exploded. Every cookware brand I know is doing over $100 million in revenue. And it's just like when the trend starts to go, if you can jump on that train, you will ride that to the top.
Yeah, but those companies that are doing 100 million in revenue, let's say, like, what's a bottom line, an average bottom line?
Probably like 20%, 15 to 20%.
It's not bad.
Yeah. Yeah, not terrible for like, cash in the bank at the end of the day, all things
Yeah.
paid.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm interested, Nick. Like, if you ever want to collab on a DC,
Let's do it. Let's make the Carly bot.
what we should do is you handle like the D2C concept, fulfillment, marketing, and then I'll handle the tech stack, like AI Carly bot and some cool fun AI stuff that and community
I'm down.
stuff that just like makes the experience unique.
Yeah, I'm totally game for that.
All right, Nick, thanks for coming on. Like, I think everyone should sign up to your newsletter. Where could people find your newsletter?
The easiest place is just nick.co/email, nik.co/email. I think if you just Google Nick email, it comes up as well.
Yeah, and this is like this email, I subscribe to it, and I'm not huge in the D2C space. I think I told you this, Nick. My dad, who has has a Shopify store as like a side hustle, was telling me about you, not knowing that we knew each other, and he loves your emails. He
That's
loves your
amazing.
emails, and
Shout out to Mr.
shout out
Eisenberg.
Mr. Eisenberg. And so it's really what I like about it is it gets me thinking, and you give good examples of other brands doing cool stuff. So
yeah, I think a lot of the things I talk about too, I try to be super tactical and explain it as if I'm talking to a 5-year-old. And I think a lot of those things can be applied in other industries or other verticals.
Yeah, exactly. And then you do have a podcast, which is also awesome. Can you give a quick shout out to that?
Yeah, I'm a co-host of a podcast called Limited Supply. It's myself and this guy Moiz Ali, who founded and sold Native Deodorant to Procter and Gamble. We think of us as like the Bloomberg business for e-commerce, retail, and D2C. We try to take things that are interesting to us or happening or sort of like current events in the industry, break them down, talk about them, and try to find takeaways for our listeners.
And people can go watch that on YouTube, I guess, and Spotify and
yeah, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, basically wherever you get your podcast, just look up Limited Supply.
I've been finding it hard to get YouTube subscribers. So recently we've been trying to like double down on YouTube. So like people who are listening to this, like there's visuals if you go to YouTube. So go to YouTube where it happens and subscribe. So we'll put like the images of some of the websites that Nick was talking about, and it's a way better educational experience. But Nick, tell the people to subscribe. They're not going to listen to me.
Go subscribe to YouTube. If you're not subscribed to Where It Happens on YouTube, your business is going to fail. And it's not going to be anybody's fault except yours for not subscribing to Where It Happens on YouTube.
It's not like we want your business to fail, right? It's we don't want it.
Yeah, in fact, we're trying to help you. It's your fault for not going and hitting subscribe. And while you're there, go find this episode right now on YouTube and click the like button.
Yeah, and tweet at us if you enjoyed this episode. We will respond.